We welcome in Bryan Munson of Husker Online. Bryan, how are you? How's your Monday going?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. Let me just ask you this. How much of your good vibes are from Amari Cooper?
Obviously, I didn't catch a lot of the Buffalo game. I was busy with my son at a football camp, but I caught the tail end of it. I think Buffalo played a pretty complete game, and I think my vibes from all of that this weekend are the fact that they went on the road and almost like converted one of the toughest places to play in the NFL into almost like a Buffalo home game. It was pretty wild at the end, to have the crowd be so supportive of Buffalo. I mean, I know they travel well, there's no doubt about it, but feeling good right now. I don't understand. The one thing I don't understand what's going on in the NFL right now. I mean, I'm obviously incredibly biased. I'll admit it. I think Josh Allen should be at the top of everybody's list for MVP. No one is talking about him. Everybody's talking about Goff, and with good reason. But I mean, Josh just threw his first pick of the entire season, and they are 5-2, and probably should be 6-1. And I know that they got to figure out some things on defense to beat a team like Baltimore, but gosh, Cleveland just did it.
Right, Cleveland, the Browns.
I know, and good for Winston too, man.
Yeah.
I'm really rooting for that guy to rejuvenate himself there in Cleveland. Man, he's got a great opportunity.
Well, unfortunately for you, Bryan, too, your biggest competition in the AFC was bolstered today. Your division rival Patriots trade with the Chiefs for a 6th-round pick. Everyone hates everyone. What's going on?
I saw that, and I tell you what, I've been given my one Patriots fan. That's all anybody can take. You can only have one friend that's a Pats fan. They are so unbearable. But this guy, I told him, I said, even the Jets are out tanking the Patriots right now. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, what is it right now? They scored 20 plus points, didn't turn it over, allowed fewer than 250 yards. And in NFL history, teams are 750-1 when generating that type of box score. The only loss was the Jets on Sunday.
Jets.
That is a stat line right there. That's one to go ahead and write home about. Good job, Jets.
They did it. Bryan, let's flip to college football. Just your takeaways from Nebraska, Ohio State. What's maybe the biggest thing or two that stood out to you from Saturday?
Well, I mean, after allowing that big touchdown catch in the first quarter, they never lost composure. They never checked out. They, you kind of felt like maybe things might flip, back for them. The defense played all 4 quarters. Offense played incredibly well. The questionable play calling, I know people are picking on the screen passes a lot. I get it. I saw the officials' apology for the spot there on Johnson's run. I don't even know how he came up with that line. There was only basically somebody's legs from basically below the knee back past the 40 for him to spot where he was spotting at. There was nobody laying there. I didn't understand that at all. And then the offensive PIs and the inconsistency with when people were leaving for the procedure calls. I have felt, I'd say over the course of 10, 12, 15 years, that there's always been like one call or a couple of calls that have just stuck and just been like, I cannot believe, that call is what you'll go back and point to about that game. But I mean, that one on Saturday was just, it was even worse. It was just it was a whole series of them. And I think that there's a lot for this team to feel good about. I mean, obviously they're 7.5-point favorites this weekend against a UCLA team that finally tasted a little bit of success, a week ago. I think obviously UCLA is very talented. I think that Nebraska got a great shot of confidence. I know there's no moral victories, and I agree with that. You're trying to win ball games. Can you feel good about it? Can you be proud? Sure. But you don't turn back around and smile and say the job is done. You know, however, that you're on the right path to being successful. And that I think is very critical. Now, here's my other thought about what happened on Saturday. I'm not sure Ohio State's the best team in the Big Ten. I am going to be Indiana and Ohio State square off, don't they? Or won't they?
Yes, Indiana has both Ohio State and Michigan remaining.
I will be glued to that television set when Indiana and Ohio State play. I don't even care where it's at. I don't. I think Indiana, after what I saw anyway, I really feel like that's a different team this year. I don't know how else to kind of summarize it, but I think that's going to be a very interesting game. Michigan, I love Alex Orji. My son played with him down here in high school, and we love the whole entire family. I hope he has nothing but success up there, but obviously that's a team that's not like what they were a year ago, and they're still trying to find that identity, and I'll be rooting for Alex in that game too. But man, Indiana, that just kind of contrasting those two games since it was kind of back-to-back weeks, right? I mean, it's right. That's been an interesting kind of thing to kind of digest a little bit.
Bryan, how much do you trust that Nebraska has turned that mental corner? Even though it was a loss, right? I feel like a win, would always do more for a team's confidence than a loss would. But obviously, you said 7.5-point favorites for the Huskers against UCLA. Yeah. Well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you? What's your trust level that, hey, this actually was, despite the loss, a step in the right direction for the program, and they're not going to take 2 steps back from it this time?
A 9.2. Ooh. I'm giving it all the way into the 9.2 range. Okay. They're scoring an A, regardless of it being a 90%, 10% scale or a 92% scale, getting into the A- range. I really feel like, first of all, they came out of that pretty unscathed too. Yeah. They're healthy. And I know that they're, still waiting on what's going to happen with Hill, kind of moving forward. It sounds like Ramirez back, so that's good to kind of get another person back there in the offensive backfield there with Raiola. Raiola gets a chance to, take advantage of the other team, feeling some pressure, and takes off and becomes a runner. So I think that, he's exploring the space, and he's understanding more and more about the game. And, and you don't need to be, like I said before, you don't need to be Harvard. You don't need to be Joe Gans. You don't need to be, Taylor Martinez to be effective running the football. You just have to know when to do it. And then really it all comes down to just setting yourself up for the next play. If you can get a first down, great. If you can set up second and short, third and short, great. Don't take a hit. Don't put yourself at risk. Get down, get out of bounds, take what you can get, and be sure to just get ready to go on the next down. Just don't put yourself at risk. So I think he did a fantastic job of doing that. I know that there was a hit late in the fourth quarter where it looked like he kind of took one on the shoulder. It looked like a straight on into that shoulder, like almost like it could be like a contusion. Mm-hmm. Don't think it was too much like to be too serious, but the way he was letting it hang, like almost like the shoulder might have went just like dead. Like you can hit it in such a way to where you get the face mask on that point of that shoulder, and it just kind of goes numb and falls. So it's not really like a stinger necessarily, but you can get that to where you take a punch so hard that it just kind of makes the whole thing kind of go numb. So I'd be very interested, of course, to make sure you get the treatment on that, but I don't think it's a long-term situation there. I thought he looked pretty good, and I think they're ready for UCLA, man. I think that's going to be this will get them bowl eligible this weekend.
All right, Bryan, you said you're 9.2 confident that Nebraska has mentally turned the corner. Are you 9.2 out of 10 confident that Chase Lofton has mentally turned the corner from Florida State to Nebraska?
I've only been talking about it. I don't even know now. Gosh, it's going to be Halloween this week. I've been talking about him in Nebraska. Oh, man, I'm rubbing my eyes thinking about it. I'd have to go back to my 3 and out or my tunnel talk in September, early to mid-September, where I started talking about it, that I felt like this was, primed for poaching. And it's flipping season. I mean, it's what the words are that we're using, all on 3 Network right now, is it's flipping season. So I feel like this is a very positive indicator for Nebraska. We mentioned, I think before, just kind of the difficult season that, Florida State had in front of them. And what Mike is just having a rough go of it down there. And we were laying out like all the games, even like in October and November, that they had in front of them. It's just like, there's just no way to kind of consider them to be favorites for that one. So I think that this is a big get for Nebraska. I mean, if you look at what Nebraska's got in the class currently, like with Bear Tenney is a monster, aggressive blocking tight end. He does not have great offensive stats, despite the fact that athletically, he's pretty much a freak. And he could be that kind of guy that could put his hand in the dirt and play tight and go ahead and be a pass-catching tight end. But he gets after it when it comes to blocking. And that's what he's being really recruited to do, is to kind of be the guy that's going to help set the edge. Therefore, getting a Lofton in the class, I'm going to write my 3 out about this. Getting a Lofton in the class makes a lot of sense. Lofton is a 215, 220-pound guy. He's long. He's a 6'4", 6'5" guy. But he's, kind of more Carter Nelson kind of sized, right? Mm-hmm. And not maybe that peak athletic kind of freak that Carter was. But I would give you this. I think he's a little bit more polished as a route runner. And I think that was definitely, you can kind of point to his experience and when he picked up the offer from OU at the camp, a year ago. I think that says a lot about what he was able to do down there. With Venables is going to offer you at a summer camp, you were impressive. There's no other reason to go ahead and doubt that kid. And he's having a heck of a year. Even through 8 games, I went through and did the stats just on him on Tunnel Talk on Friday, comparing him and Isaac Jensen. I think Nebraska can get both those guys, Jensen and next year and Chase this year. That's huge. But what this means also for what Nebraska's done with the class, like the in-state recruits, to lock them down the way that they did, because it wasn't looking good for Jones and it didn't look good for Lofton. Pretty big turnaround for Rule and crew. Pretty big one.
What do you attribute the late pushes to from Nebraska? What got them back in the game and pushed them over the edge?
I think that the genuine side of them always seems to win. It's the winning play when you're not standing on some sort of propped up idea. You're standing on your values. You're standing on the way things are, not the way you want things to be. You're not having to go ahead and talk out of both sides of your mouth. I think that Chase can talk to Christian Jones. I think he can go talk to other people. And obviously he's been getting the recruiting attention, to kind of reinforce him coming back and taking another look and ultimately potentially ready to flip to Nebraska. I think that what it really comes down to is just, this is a group that takes recruiting very, very seriously. And I think that they made sure that even after, he does this and commits to going to Tallahassee, that they didn't stop. And I think that that's one of those things you get to wonder about, when I get to be a player in that program, how are those guys going to think about me? How are those guys going to treat me then? Guess what? I just got a great indicator. The last 5 months, I've been off the board, committed to Florida State. Now I'm ready to flip back because these guys haven't stopped a minute. And I think that that's awesome. I think it just says everything you need to hear about keeping players home, which is still the biggest priority for Matt Rule by far when it comes to recruiting.
Bryan, we haven't seen Nebraska at home since the 14-7 win against Rutgers. Been kind of building to this UCLA weekend as a recruiting kind of touch point before the stretch run here. What's on tap for Nebraska going into the UCLA week before a bye?
Yeah, there's going to be some dudes here. I think obviously the 2:30 start, the afternoon start is going to be helpful. Maybe the last big recruiting weekend of the year. It really depends what happens with the Wisconsin weekend. So you are going to get Chase Lofton into town, right? So big one to get there. The last time I talked to Houston Torres from Hawaii, the Nebraska commitment, he was coming up this weekend. I believe that St. Louis High School is done for their season. So it would make sense if he's able to get back this week, possibly. And then you have Kamari Moore coming in, Lee Summit North, the defensive tackle, the recent decommitment from Oklahoma. I think that would then signal to me that Isaiah Mosey is going to be coming in. Juju Marks, the most recent commitment for Nebraska, the 6'7", 260-pound-ish offensive tackle from Olathe South. He will be there. Again, I think there'll be a few more guys coming in for the 2025 group. So don't be too surprised if like a Jordan Allen shows up there from Buford. It's possible that happens. But if you get into like the 2026 group, you got Braden Wilmus, who's a 6'8", 270-pound offensive tackle junior from Lawrence, Kansas. Drayden Punt from Iowa, Orange City, Iowa. He's a big-time edge. And then you get into the 2027 group, you start talking about a kid down here in Texas, Ethan Feaster from DeSoto. Obviously played with Buford last season. He is the number one rated player in the state for 2027 and the number one rated wide receiver in the country that year. So pretty big-time recruit right there for Nebraska to get a chance to host this fall.
So if you're Nebraska, do you shoot the wad on UCLA weekend? Do you keep a little in the bank just in case you have some guys for Wisconsin?
I think that Nebraska has to be very aware that this is going to be, potentially their last big recruiting weekend, because I just don't know how long you can kind of continue to roll the dice and think you're going to get one of those friendly start times. So now that you have a start time like this, get them in. Make sure you get it. The chances are the weather will be better regardless. You get any deeper, you keep rolling the dice a little bit more with game time or weather or whatever. So I think Nebraska has to try to get them in. Plus, feel a little bit better about UCLA than I do about Wisconsin. Actually, you know what else is kind of cool? Braden Locke, quarterback at Wisconsin, was my son's quarterback.
No way.
In high school. Yeah. So he's got ties to two Big Ten quarterbacks. Pretty wild. So, yeah, I think I'd feel better about UCLA right now.
There you go. Bryan, as always, we appreciate your time. We'd point people to Husker Online to check you out at Bryan Munson _ on Twitter as well. Have a great rest of your week. We'll catch up on UCLA and how the weekend went for the Huskers next week.
Sounds good, guys. We'll talk soon.